Consider the vast ocean of information you navigate daily. How much of it do you truly examine? How much simply washes over you, accepted without question? We believe we are rational, yet our minds are subtly shaped by currents we rarely perceive, steered by assumptions we don't even know we hold. This hidden vulnerability affects every decision, every belief, every interaction we have, often without our conscious awareness, leaving us susceptible in ways we seldom acknowledge. This isn't merely an abstract philosophical concern. It dictates how you interpret news headlines, how you react to disagreements, even how you manage your personal goals and challenges. Without the tools to dissect information and evaluate arguments rigorously, you risk becoming an echo chamber for prevailing opinions, or, worse, falling prey to manipulation disguised as reason. But what if the ability to think clearly, to question deeply, wasn't an elusive gift reserved for geniuses? What if critical thinking is fundamentally a skill, a mental muscle that can be deliberately strengthened through consistent exercise? Imagine possessing a framework, a set of practical techniques you could employ every single day, almost effortlessly, to sharpen your analytical edge and fortify your mind against flawed reasoning. The methods to cultivate this sharper mind aren't complex secrets hidden in dusty archives. They are elegant, surprisingly simple principles of inquiry, refined over centuries of human thought. These techniques act like keys, unlocking deeper layers of understanding beneath the surface of everyday problems and pronouncements. Mastering these exercises won't just make you a better thinker. It will fundamentally alter how you perceive reality. It's about moving from passive acceptance to active engagement with the world of ideas. Prepare to learn 3 specific, actionable techniques that, when practiced daily, can systematically enhance your ability to analyze, evaluate, and reason with greater clarity and depth than ever before. The first exercise is known as the 5 Whys technique. Its power lies in its simplicity and relentless focus on causality. When confronted with a problem, a statement, or even a strongly held belief, you begin by asking a straightforward question: why? Then, whatever the answer, you ask why, again, probing the reason behind that answer. Imagine, for instance, you find yourself consistently procrastinating on an important task. Asking why the first time might yield, "Because I don't feel motivated," a surface-level answer. Ask why, again, "Why don't I feel motivated?" Perhaps the answer is, "Because the task feels overwhelming." We continue digging. Why does the task feel overwhelming? The answer might be, "Because I'm unsure where to start or how to break it down." This reveals a lack of clarity or planning as a contributing factor. We're moving beyond vague feelings towards actionable issues. Let's press further. Why am I unsure where to start? Perhaps the underlying reason is, "Because I fear I might do it imperfectly or fail." Now we're touching on deeper psychological barriers, fear of failure or perfectionism. This reveals a core belief or anxiety that might be driving the entire chain of procrastination, far removed from the initial statement about simply lacking motivation. Identifying such fears is often the key to unlocking progress in various life areas. One final why could solidify this. Why do I fear failure or imperfection? The answer might involve past experiences, societal pressures, or a fixed mindset belief that abilities are static. Because I believe making mistakes reflects poorly on my fundamental competence. Reaching this level uncovers a foundational belief system that fuels the fear, which in turn causes the feeling of being overwhelmed, leading to lack of motivation and manifesting as procrastination. Notice how this technique systematically peels back layers. It prevents us from stopping at superficial explanations and forces a deeper investigation into the chain of cause and effect. It helps distinguish symptoms from root causes, which is essential for effective problem solving, whether the issue is personal, technical, or societal. This method isn't limited to personal reflection. Apply it to a news report stating a particular societal problem is worsening. Why is it worsening? Because of policy X, why was policy X implemented? Because of belief Y, why is belief Y prevalent? Because of historical factor Z, why did historical factor Z occur? This structured inquiry helps cut through rhetoric and complexity to understand the deeper drivers behind events and trends in the world around us. The primary critical thinking muscle strengthened here is analysis, the ability to break down complex information into constituent parts and understand the relationships between them. It trains the mind to look for causal links, to question assumptions implicitly embedded in statements, and to avoid jumping to conclusions based on surface-level information. Consistent practice builds a habit of deeper inquiry, fostering intellectual humility and rigor in equal measure. How can you integrate this daily? When reading an article, pause and ask why, about the main claim or a statistic presented. During your commute, reflect on a challenge you're facing and apply the 5 whys even in conversation. Mentally trace the whys behind a strong statement someone makes without necessarily voicing them. Just a few minutes each day trains this analytical habit, making deep questioning a more automatic response. The 5 whys technique is your foundational tool for digging beneath the surface. It encourages you to move beyond accepting things at face value and cultivates a persistent curiosity about the underlying structures of problems and arguments. Now, let's transition to our second exercise, which focuses specifically on identifying and scrutinizing the often invisible pillars upon which statements and beliefs rest, assumptions. This requires a different, yet equally vital, critical faculty. Our second daily exercise is assumption challenging. Every statement, belief, argument, or piece of information rests upon a foundation of assumptions, ideas taken for granted as true without explicit proof within the context. These assumptions are often unstated and invisible, yet they fundamentally shape the conclusion or the perceived validity of the information presented. Learning to spot and question these hidden premises is a cornerstone of critical thinking. Why is challenging assumptions so crucial? Because if the underlying assumption is flawed, weak, or untrue, then the entire argument or conclusion built upon it becomes questionable, no matter how logical the subsequent steps may seem. Assumptions act as the starting points of reasoning. Scrutinizing them allows us to evaluate the true strength and reliability of the information or perspective being presented, rather than just accepting the surface narrative uncritically. Consider a common news headline: "New study shows coffee boosts productivity." What assumptions might underpin this statement? It assumes the study's methodology was sound, that productivity was defined and measured consistently and relevantly, that the results are statistically significant and not due to chance, that the effect applies broadly and not just to a specific subgroup, and that boosts implies a meaningful, practical increase. Each of these is an assumption worth examining. The exercise involves actively listing these potential assumptions. Take the statement or belief you're examining and ask, what must be true for this statement to hold water? What is being taken for granted here? What context is being assumed? What definitions are being silently relied upon? Write them down or mentally catalog them. The simple act of making the implicit explicit is the first step toward critical evaluation. Once you have a list of assumptions, the next step is to challenge them. For each assumption, ask critical questions. Is this always true? What evidence supports this assumption? Is there evidence against it? Are there alternative assumptions that could be made? What if this assumption isn't true? How would that change the conclusion or the interpretation of the information? This probing tests the strength of the foundation. Let's apply the "what if this isn't true" question to our coffee example. What if the study's definition of productivity was simply number of tasks completed, ignoring quality? The headline's impact changes. What if the effect only applied to people who were sleep-deprived? The applicability narrows significantly. What if the study was funded by the coffee industry? That raises questions about potential bias influencing the results or their interpretation. This exercise is particularly powerful when applied to our own deeply held beliefs. Take a belief you feel strongly about and try to identify the underlying assumptions. Why do you believe this? What experiences or information formed this belief? What are you taking for granted? Then, dare to ask, what if those assumptions are wrong or incomplete? This self-reflection is challenging but incredibly valuable for intellectual growth and humility. Challenging assumptions helps develop the critical thinking skills of evaluation and identifying bias. Evaluation involves assessing the credibility and strength of claims and arguments. By examining the assumptions, you are directly evaluating the foundational strength. Identifying bias becomes easier because assumptions often reveal underlying perspectives, values, or interests that might be influencing the information presented. Assumptions often stem from cultural norms, personal experiences, or limited information. What seems like common sense in one context might be a highly questionable assumption in another. Recognizing this conditionality is key. This exercise trains you to look beyond the surface logic and inquire into the very premises upon which reasoning is built, fostering a more nuanced and context-aware understanding. Daily integration can be simple. When you encounter an advertisement, ask, "What assumptions does this ad make about my desires or values?" When reading an opinion piece, identify the core assumptions the author relies on. Before accepting a piece of advice, consider the assumptions behind it. Just dedicating a few moments to consciously identifying one or two assumptions in the information you consume daily builds this critical muscle steadily. Assumption challenging is your tool for inspecting the foundations of knowledge and belief. It moves beyond analyzing the structure, like the 5 whys, to evaluating the very materials used to build an argument. Now, we turn to the third exercise, which broadens our view entirely: perspective shifting. This technique cultivates mental flexibility and empathy, crucial components of comprehensive critical thought that allow us to navigate disagreement and complexity more effectively. The third exercise is perspective shifting. This involves consciously stepping outside your own viewpoint and attempting to understand, and even argue convincingly for perspectives that differ from, or even oppose, your own. It's about developing cognitive empathy and recognizing that complex issues rarely have a single, simple, correct perspective. True critical thinking demands the ability to navigate and appreciate this multiplicity of viewpoints. Why is this so important? Our natural tendency is towards confirmation bias, seeking out and favoring information that confirms our existing beliefs while ignoring or dismissing contradictory evidence. Perspective shifting directly counteracts this. By forcing yourself to articulate an opposing view fairly and strongly, you expose yourself to different lines of reasoning, potential weaknesses in your own arguments, and the valid points others might hold. Choose a current issue, a historical event, or even a personal disagreement where there are clearly differing viewpoints. Select a perspective you don't naturally hold or perhaps even strongly disagree with. Your task is not to be swayed or to abandon your own view necessarily, but to research and understand the other perspective well enough that you could explain it clearly and argue for its merits as if you genuinely held it. This requires intellectual honesty. Ask, what are the core arguments supporting this viewpoint? What evidence do its proponents cite? What values or assumptions underpin it? What are its strongest points? What might someone holding this view see as the weaknesses in my own perspective? Try to construct the best possible case for the viewpoint you are exploring, resisting the urge to immediately refute it or set up a straw man argument. For example, consider a debate about environmental regulation versus economic growth. If you prioritize environmental protection, try to construct the strongest possible argument focusing solely on the economic benefits of deregulation, the importance of job creation, and individual liberty. Conversely, if you prioritize economic growth, build the best case for long-term environmental sustainability, the costs of ecological damage, and intergenerational equity. This exercise directly strengthens cognitive flexibility, the ability to switch between different concepts and perspectives. It also enhances empathy and the ability to understand the reasoning and motivations of others, even those with whom you fundamentally disagree. Furthermore, it sharpens your awareness of logical fallacies and rhetorical strategies, as you learn to recognize them both in others' arguments and, crucially, in your own. By understanding the strongest arguments of opposing views, you are better equipped to refine your own position, address potential weaknesses, and engage in more productive dialogue. It moves disagreements away from simple tribalism, my side is right, your side is wrong, towards a more nuanced appreciation of complexity and trade-offs inherent in most significant issues facing humanity. This fosters more constructive discourse. You can practice this daily by actively seeking out opinion pieces or analyses from perspectives different from your own. Instead of just reading to refute, read to understand. Engage with the best arguments presented. During discussions, consciously try to summarize the other person's viewpoint accurately. So, if I understand correctly, you're saying, before presenting your own. This active listening is a form of perspective shifting. Perspective shifting complements the analytical depth of the 5 whys and the foundational scrutiny of assumption challenging. It adds breadth to your critical thinking toolkit, enabling you to see the bigger picture and appreciate the multifaceted nature of reality. Together, these 3 exercises form a powerful daily regimen for cultivating a truly discerning and adaptable mind, capable of navigating complexity with greater wisdom. Let's recap the synergy between these techniques. The 5 whys drills down to root causes, enhancing analytical depth. Assumption challenging scrutinizes the hidden foundations of arguments, improving evaluative judgment and bias detection. Perspective shifting broadens your understanding by exploring alternative viewpoints, fostering cognitive flexibility and empathy. Each exercise targets different but complementary facets of critical thought. The key is consistency. Like physical exercise, the benefits to your mental acuity accumulate through regular practice. Spending just 5–10 minutes each day deliberately engaging with one of these techniques can yield significant improvements over time. It's not about dedicating hours, but about integrating these modes of thinking into your daily routines, your news consumption, your work challenges, your conversations, your self-reflection. Think of it as mental hygiene. Just as we care for our physical health daily, these exercises help maintain the health and sharpness of our minds. They cleanse our thinking of unexamined assumptions, strengthen our ability to follow logical chains, and stretch our capacity to understand different realities. This proactive mental care builds resilience against misinformation and manipulation in an increasingly complex information landscape. The cumulative effect is profound. You'll start noticing assumptions everywhere, in advertisements, in news reports, in everyday conversations, and importantly, within yourself. You'll become better at identifying the core issue beneath surface-level problems. You'll find yourself engaging with differing viewpoints more constructively and less reactively. Your thinking becomes clearer, more structured, and more nuanced. This enhanced clarity translates into better decision-making. When you can accurately identify root causes, evaluate the foundations of claims, and consider multiple perspectives, you are far better equipped to make reasoned judgments, whether in your personal life, your career, or your civic engagement. Critical thinking isn't just an intellectual exercise. It's a practical tool for navigating life more effectively and purposefully. Furthermore, developing these skills fosters intellectual humility. The more you practice questioning assumptions and exploring other perspectives, the more you recognize the limits of your own knowledge and the complexity of the world. This humility is not weakness, but a strength. It keeps the mind open to learning, prevents dogmatism, and encourages continuous refinement of understanding. It is the mark of a truly wise thinker. Don't be discouraged if it feels challenging at first. Like any skill, critical thinking requires effort and persistence. Some days your analysis will feel sharper than others. The goal isn't instant perfection, but steady progress. Celebrate the small victories, the moment you catch a hidden assumption, the time you successfully articulate an opposing view, the instant you trace a problem back to its root cause. These exercises are not meant to make you cynical or distrustful of everything. Rather, they empower you to engage with information more discerningly and constructively. The aim is not to reject everything, but to understand why you accept or reject something, based on reasoned evaluation rather than passive absorption or emotional reaction. It is about cultivating informed belief and reasoned judgment in place of mere opinion. The world needs more critical thinkers, individuals capable of analyzing complex problems, evaluating information sources rigorously, understanding diverse perspectives, and engaging in constructive dialogue. By committing to these simple daily practices, you are not only sharpening your own mind but also contributing to a more thoughtful and reasoned world, one question, one assumption, one perspective shift at a time. Remember the guiding question: what simple, practical exercises can I do every day to improve my ability to think clearly and critically? The 5 whys, assumption challenging and perspective shifting, are 3 powerful answers. They provide a concrete framework for transforming critical thinking from an abstract ideal into a tangible, daily practice accessible to everyone willing to engage their curiosity. The journey of critical thinking is lifelong. There is always more to learn, deeper questions to ask, new perspectives to consider. These exercises are not endpoints, but starting points, daily rituals to keep your mind active, engaged, and ever-evolving. They cultivate habits of thought that serve you in every area of life, fostering clarity, resilience, and a deeper connection to the world of ideas. In summary, we've explored 3 actionable techniques: digging for root causes with the 5 whys, scrutinizing foundations by challenging assumptions, and broadening understanding through perspective shifting. Each strengthens vital mental muscles: analysis, evaluation, bias detection, logical reasoning, cognitive flexibility, and empathy. Consistent daily practice is the key to unlocking their cumulative power for clearer thought and wiser judgment. Consider the power that lies in simply asking why repeatedly, in questioning what is taken for granted, and in genuinely trying to understand viewpoints different from your own. These are not complex intellectual feats, but acts of deliberate curiosity and intellectual honesty. They represent a commitment to understanding the world and oneself with greater depth and clarity, moving beyond passive reception to active, critical engagement. The quality of our thoughts shapes the quality of our lives. By dedicating a small part of each day to intentionally honing your critical thinking skills using these practical exercises, you invest in your most valuable asset, your mind. You build resilience against manipulation, deepen your understanding of complex issues, and enhance your ability to contribute meaningfully to the conversations that shape our world. As you move forward from this exploration, carry with you the central message: critical thinking is not an abstract ideal but a practical, trainable skill. The path to a sharper, more discerning mind lies not in innate genius, but in the consistent application of simple, powerful techniques. Which of these exercises will you commit to practicing, even for just 5 minutes, starting today? The journey to thinking smarter begins with that single, deliberate step.